Tub Talks with Damon. My very special guest back in the tub today, back from episode number 1, is the fabulous educator, entertainer, spokesperson, friend of mine, Matt Cameron.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I love being here.
I'm so glad to see you.
I'm glad to see you too.
You are such an important part of my life.
Thank you.
My entire life for the last 20 years. It's just, you're amazing. I'm so happy to see you and take a bath with you.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a bath with you. I haven't done it since the last time we took a bath together.
I know.
I also, my butt's a little slippery in here.
Your butt's slippery? Yeah, well.
It's fine, but just...
People's butts are slippery in the
might-
tub. The tub is slippery. People don't understand how slippery and dangerous the tub really is. Like, all these guests are on the edge. I'm telling you.
It is.
They don't get it. I cannot wait to catch up with you, but I also want to begin by asking you, what do you like most about your body right now?
What do I like most about my body? I like what I can do, and what I thought I would be able to do. I thought I'm 46. I thought I would feel aches and pains all the time. I don't. I thought I would feel very tired all the time. I don't. I thought I would start to feel like I was losing muscle and gaining fat and unable to control my weight. That's not my experience. So I like that in my world, the investment I've made in my health, eating healthfully, making sure I get enough sleep, staying away from like sugar and booze as much as I can, and getting to the gym, getting regular exercise, all those kinds of things, I feel like it's paying off, right? Like I've made that investment and now I'm not living the reality of like aches and pains everywhere all the time.
So that these ongoing changes in your life, or these ongoing practices of healthcare, of exercise, of eating well, they really have, you can feel in your 40s, right? It's like there's energy, there's strength, there's stamina.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel that too, like 53 feels nothing like I thought it was going to, though I still can't believe you're 46, because I met him when he was 26, and I still, like, in my mind, you're still 26, so I can't believe
you're 33,
so
there we go.
It's crazy. And it's such a gift, by the way. I mean, I don't think I even understood that when we met. I sort of understood it, but what a gift it is to know somebody for a 20-year span.
Yeah.
I mean, because, we weren't that old when we met, and also so many of the people I had known had passed away.
Yeah.
So to really get to be part of someone's life for this long. And I saw when you were 26 how you were conscientious about your health. You were an occupational therapist, and you knew that, like, okay, if I do certain things, if I do certain practices, my bones are more likely to withstand stress and possible injury if I just sort of play the long game. And you kind of taught me about that.
Yeah. I always thought about it in my head like a bank account, right? Like it may not yield much interest day to day, but if you keep just putting a little bit of money in, 20 years later, you find out that you have way more money in there than you put in, and you're doing better than you thought you were, right? Like, and it's that kind of investment. We so often want like a quick solution, right? And we're sold those quick solutions, right?
Yeah.
Like, just get this cream and rub it on your face and all your wrinkles will go away. We promise in under 72 hours, and like, just shit that's gonna last doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And I think about that, but I also specifically think about that as mental, spiritual health. That we need only make a very small investment in our mental, spiritual health. And we can start at any age, doesn't matter when, but if you do start early on and just maybe do a bit of meditation or studying or just some sort of reps for the brain, for the synapses early on, for me, it's become more reliable and habitual and, helpful during emotionally challenging times later on in life.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we're so tempted to think in such black and white manners that we think if I can't give this my all right now, if I can't do all of it, if I can't do it well, then I'm not going to do it. And I think it's helpful for us to think more about instead of less than 100%, maybe more than 0%, right? Like maybe 5% is all you can fire up that day, but that's still more than 0%.
Yeah.
Right?
Perfect is not the enemy of the good.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be. Even just trying, even a half-assed effort is still an ass.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I go to the gym on a regular basis, and sometimes there are days where lifting what I lifted yesterday feels like impossible. And so I'm like, all right, then maybe 70% is what I'm phoning in today, and that's what it is, but it's more than zero.
Yes.
I'm doing something.
Yes. Engaging in self-care.
Yes.
So speaking of engaging in self-care,
Yes.
I wanted to invite you into the tub.
Mm-hmm.
We're filming this in 2024 as the holiday season is upon us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these, I'm getting a phone call, it doesn't matter. I think these subjects that we're going to talk about are really relevant for people watching this all year round. And I know this from working as a therapist now for 3 decades, that grief, loss, and losing a parent, specifically losing a mother, is one of the hardest and most challenging aspects of the human experience that we can process, that we can go through.
Mm-hmm.
And my unscientifically supported data tells me that it's harder on gay men than our straight counterparts. I'm not trying to make it a competition here. I just feel like it lands deeper in gay queer men than it does straight men. And again, I'm not sure that's accurate. I'm just telling you what my practice has been. But with your permission, can we talk about what's been going on this year and what this journey has been for you?
We sure can.
Okay.
We sure can. Do you want me to share?
Please.
Okay. So my mom died in May of this year after an 8.5-year experience living with Lewy body dementia. She died young. She was young when she was diagnosed. As an occupational therapist, I had done mostly cognitive work, working with people with dementia and brain injuries. So when my mom showed early signs of dementia, I saw it right away. We were able to get her the care that she needed and make sure she could stay at home safely as long as she could. And in 2019, she went into a nursing home where she received amazing care, outstanding care. As someone who worked in nursing homes, I saw a lot, and I gotta say it's probably one of the best. So I was really happy about that. But she was gonna die from that, and she did. She died peacefully. I was able to say goodbye to her, and and that's what happened. And so I did not have a relationship with my dad. As far as I know, he's still alive, but I'm not connected to him. So this is really my only parent, and you know, my first experience having a parent die, and also my only parent dying.
So your mother was your primary caretaker, sole caretaker, growing up.
Absolutely.
Raising you, raising your brother.
Yes. Yep.
She, someone I knew and really admired so much as such a very amazing, strong, funny person.
Yeah. She was very funny.
And carried a lot. You know, being a single parent is a very, very hard job.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was, as a single parent, what do you remember about some of the things the challenges she faced?
Oh my God. So she was very strict, which did not make sense to me at the time. And there are still things about her strictness that I'm like, that still doesn't really make sense to me. But she kept saying that she wanted to raise my brother and I as good husbands for our wives. This was before she knew I was going to have a husband. So she made us learn how to do laundry. She taught us how to iron clothes, how to vacuum and clean the bathroom and just take care of a house, and how to go to a grocery store and figure out which product is the better deal if you're choosing between two cereals. Which one's the better deal when they might be different sizes, so you can't do a one-for-one comparison. Or, when do you look for, this kind of vegetable, when will it be in season? And, what's a good deal on this and what's not? Just the practical things about living life that she taught us. And some of her strictness felt unnecessarily strict, but what it did is raised me to be disciplined enough that I could live successfully in New York City and then start my own career and take care of myself and take care of business and live a happy life. She really set me up for that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you were the oldest of two.
I am.
And so that also is a really sacred relationship. You were the firstborn.
Yeah, I was the firstborn, and in in my mom's family, I was also the first grandchild. So there was
Ooh.
even that, right? Like, I'm the oldest grandchild, I'm the firstborn of my mom. So yeah, there was, you know, a lot of adoration placed on me because of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the last 5 years before her body passed away, and I'm being very intentional with how I say it, we'll talk about why, but the last 5 years before her body passed, you had really taken on the role of so much of the making sure she was in a safe space,
Yes.
the nursing home, the bills, the insurance. I just remember, like, it felt like it was a full-time job to do all that, to figure out all that you took that on.
Yeah.
Right? What was that like?
It was a lot. It was at times incredibly frustrating and felt like, really, are you just, like, why are you making it this difficult?
Who was making it?
Like insurance companies. There was an insurance company in particular that was, you know, had her long-term care insurance policy, and it was just like constant headaches for years. It took me close to 2 years just to get the claim started because they just were very, very confusing about the paperwork, and then they would time things out, and it took a lot. But I also was like, I'm someone who knows, first of all, I know what I'm doing because I worked in healthcare before, so I understand all these things. And my mom had been wise enough to set up a trust, set up a will, set up living documents that she needed, and then take time to go over it with my brother and I and tell us what things were and where things were and how to do things and all that kind of stuff. So I had some knowledge about what I was facing when I went into it, and it was still that difficult. And I thought, I can't imagine people who don't have any experience or language or knowledge here. Like, how do they navigate this? At the same time, trying to care for a loved one, watching a loved one, you know, get sick, right? And dealing with the emotions of all of that. Yeah, it can be a very overwhelming process.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a lot, even with your health literacy, even with your background.
Yeah.
You still had to face obstructive insurance companies and bullshit and paperwork and signatures and resending stuff and notaries and all that kind of thing.
And I'm not like in the majority here. The majority of the people in the United States don't have medical fluency. They don't understand what their options are sometimes. They don't understand how to advocate for themselves, or they don't believe it will work.
Yeah.
Right?
So you spent so many years, I saw you, being a caretaker, emotionally, financially, insurance-wise, ensuring her safety. And then in May of 2024, her body passed.
Yeah.
All right. And we're now just past the 6-month mark on that.
Yeah.
How are you?
I am okay. I still cry very easily. I talk to her almost every day, which helps, like, because I can hear her answering me, and I can hear her sometimes saying to me, like, you've done enough crying now, it's time to get your day going, you know? And like, that is also helpful. It's helpful to, you know, to sometimes say, okay, I've done enough of this for now, and I'm gonna go do something else, and I can come back to this later. I had an experience, because when I think about my mom, I cry very easily. I had this experience actually on the just after the 6 month, like the day after the 6 month, whatever. Anyway, I was baking cookies and I had some music on, and I was just telling you this. I felt happy, and I thought, oh, you know, my mom used to bake all the time, because she did. And I was like smiling about it for a minute, and it was the sort of the first time I had a thought about my mom where a smile came to my face, and I had this minute of like, oh, I loved that about her, and I still love that, like, I get to bake and think about her, you know. And then I started thinking, I miss her, and I started crying and all that. But I'm starting to see moments where there might be some joy for me. That's not clouded by grief. Yeah.
do you get to feel connected with her through baking?
Yeah. I miss her in a way that I could never have fathomed. I cannot explain. It's this literal hole in my life, in my heart, that is just so utterly confusing. And I can't call her and tell her I miss her. But I can bake brownies. I'm really good at baking brownies because I wanted to make good brownies because she made good brownies, and I wanted to bring her good brownies in the nursing home. So I got really good at making brownies. And I get to make brownies and do something that feels good, and I have people in my life that I can share them with. And most of those people know the significance when I give them brownies. I'm like, my mom loved brownies, they know that. Some people don't, but it doesn't matter. That's not the point for me.
I love the brownies. I'm going to say that. Are there other times or places or spaces that you feel connected?
Yes, and I can't tell you a specific time or place because it doesn't happen like that. Like every time I go to 23rd Street, I think about my mom. It's not like that. She's everywhere. And so sometimes I think about her. I was in the grocery store a few weeks ago looking at ice cream. My mom loved ice cream. She would rather just have ice cream all day instead of any other food. And I was looking at the ice cream trying to think about what kind I wanted, and I just didn't really know. And I started to cry in the grocery store because I was like thinking about my mom and ice cream, and and then I was like, my mom would be like, dude, do you really maybe just not want ice cream? Which was the case, and I left. But she's everywhere for me, so she could be anywhere. Yeah.
So with the holidays, does this time of year impact the feelings or the grief in any way? Does it exacerbate them? Is it just kind of the same? Or
yes. So my mom's favorite holiday was Thanksgiving, which just passed. That was very meaningful for her. She always hosted it. She loved it. It was her day. When she got married on Thanksgiving, and I don't even remember what day it was. I could figure it out, but she always celebrated her wedding anniversary on Thanksgiving, not the calendar date it was. Her birthday is the 19th of December, and then there's Christmas, which wasn't like a big deal for us, but is still a holiday where you might get together with your family. And growing up, my mom always made Christmas like way more magic than I ever expected. She'd always be like, she was a single mom, right? Like, so it was like one income, and she'd always be like, Christmas is gonna be a little thin this year, and I was like, it's fine, whatever. And then she'd just come up with an abundance of presents, which always just surprised me. So those things feel a little bit daunting, but I was so scared of how I was gonna feel on Thanksgiving, and I gave into it. I was just like, I'm just gonna feel however I'm gonna feel. And I had that moment, of oh, I'm happy to be baking. This feels really good,
So when you say you gave into it, you gave into what on Thanksgiving?
I decided to try and I just was like, yeah, I might have a really sad day today. I might be really sad because my mom's dead today, and this was her favorite holiday, and she's not here. I might feel that way, and I did, but not a lot.
So you took time and space for yourself on Thanksgiving this year.
Yeah.
The first year without her.
Yep.
And I know you had declined some other invitations, including mine, to be with family or created family, and you decided to be with yourself, in your space.
Yeah. Because, I hadn't really sensed my mom a lot, my mom's presence. And so I was like, I want on Thanksgiving, I want to be alone, so that if I can sense that, if I can experience that, I can be without distraction to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really aiming for a transformation in my grief. I didn't know what that would look like, and I didn't know what it would feel like, and I didn't know if it was attainable, but I was like, I want this day to change me somehow. I want this day to be used to progress my grief somehow. And it did.
It did?
It did, yeah.
How did it transform?
Well, you know, I got up and I didn't feel as sad as I thought I would. And I was like, oh, maybe this won't be as bad. And overall, it wasn't. At one point in the early morning, I was sipping my coffee and I got teary-eyed. And I talked to my mom and I was like, you know what? And this is it. This is the crying I'm going to do for today. And for the rest of the day, I'm going to do whatever I feel like doing. And I'm going to think about you and honor you. And I mean, I did end up crying, I think, another time later that day. I think I might have been watching something that made me a little teary-eyed or whatever.
And is that, quote, bad? Like, is that a bad thing to cry?
No. Oh, no.
Yeah.
So for me, it is actually a really good stress relief. Like, I often feel so much better and so much more positive. Like, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I feel like a friggin' monster. I feel just like, rah.
How's that again?
Rah.
Oh, okay.
So, sometimes I'll be watering my plants and I'll be talking to my mom, and it kind of just helps me like shake it off a little bit, you know? Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong, quote unquote, and I know you know this, but I think sometimes when people are grieving, or in this culture, we're often taught, that's bad. Are you comfortable?
Yes, I am.
Sometimes, people think like, well, if I'm crying, it means that I'm doing something wrong, or I'm not grieving the right way, or, why 10 years, 15 years later, am I still crying about the mother I miss so much?
Yeah.
And you would say...
in a world full of all the possibilities that you can make up, why do you want to make up that you're wrong about being sad about losing your mom or your dad or your brother or sister? Like, why would you do that to yourself? Yeah. Like, it's already hard enough. Why do you have to then decide that, like, and I'm doing it wrong too?
Right.
And that's not to say that there aren't times where grief can become overwhelming and you might need some help, and that's okay, right? But like, my mom died just over 6 months ago. For fuck's sake, I haven't even experienced a full year without her. Of course I'm going to be sad, and because there's a lot of firsts coming up. My first New Year, my first birthday. We just had my brother's first birthday without her,
Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Memorial Day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we had Memorial Day. That was the weekend she died.
That was right after, yeah.
But yeah, We know all about the stages of grief, right? And we can talk about all of that. But what I've learned from when my mom died is grief is just an intensely personal journey. Even the journey that my mother and my brother and myself and my brother and I are on, we had the same mom, we're only a year and a half apart. Our experiences of this are very different. And the journeys that we're experiencing on a deep level are very different, right? And, your grief is yours, and however it comes out is okay, and whatever it feels like is okay. And as long as the constructs of like the stages of grief are helpful to you. Like, I sometimes, when I feel angry, I remember like, oh, that's kind of like maybe a stage of grief, and maybe I'm just dealing with that, because sometimes I am. It's helpful to just like make me not take it less seriously. But if you find yourself then negatively judging yourself because of this like model of how we're supposed to grieve, you're doubling down on your hard time unnecessarily.
Yeah. So we can be present with the pain. We can be present with the anger, with the sadness. We can be present with the grief. But we don't have to suffer with the concepts like, oh, I'm doing this wrong, or I should be doing it differently, or I should be feeling differently, or I should be hanging out with all my friends on Thanksgiving, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. that does not serve you. It just doesn't. It doesn't serve you to look at some external reality and decide that you're wrong about it, right? Like, not maybe reality isn't the right word, but like an external framework, right? Like, and you can think about it this in a thousand different ways. Like I shouldn't call him the next day after our first date because I'll look too desperate, right? Like, fuck that, man. Like, there are so many rules that we think are these universal realities, and they're just like kind of things we sort of agreed. We're like, all right, I guess that's the way things go, but you don't have to agree.
Yeah. We don't have to suffer. We don't have to go with societal norms that are harmful.
Yeah.
Right. What am I answering that? That's probably
Okay.
We're in Brooklyn. Right. We don't have to continue to engage or entertain or struggle with the energy that's harmful, that creates strain, that creates suffering.
Yeah.
Again, I discern between pain and suffering.
Yes.
Right, and it sounds like Thanksgiving was an opportunity to just be with the pain or be with anything that you were feeling. You weren't pushing against it. You weren't resisting it. You weren't saying anything wrong about it. You were just being present with it, making space for all of it.
Right, and in anticipation of that, I made sure to get myself some good snack foods that I like, and I baked myself a pie the day before because I had felt like a pie, and I really like fizzy water, so I had a couple of bottles of fizzy water in the house, and I made sure that my favorite, most favorite comfies were good to go, and I had some movies that I wanted to watch that I had saved on streaming services. So I expected to have pain, but I was not willing to experience suffering. I was like, this is gonna hurt, but I'll take care of myself through it. I'm not gonna pour me, I'm not gonna be miserable, I'm not gonna think about the list of regrets in my life, and this Thanksgiving is another one. Like, I'm not gonna do that.
Right, you weren't giving that part meaning and that it didn't deserve. In other words, like the choice to be alone on Thanksgiving, which you weren't alone energetically, but alone physically, by choice. You weren't giving that some sort of meaning or heaviness that it didn't earn.
Right, and to be clear, it's not like that little voice wasn't in my head all of a sudden. It was still there, like, oh, maybe you should have gone to Thanksgiving, and was this really that bad? Did you make the right choice? Like, but I didn't choose to believe it. And it took some work sometimes. I had to be like, dude, that's just old thinking, right? Like, I had to talk to myself a little bit. It's not that I didn't experience negative thoughts. It's not that I was just like, well, I'll be sad and eat this fizzy water and everything will be fine. And like, I still had to do the work of not allowing my thinking to get carelessly distracted into some sort of suffering cycle of thought, right?
Now, were there any spiritual frameworks or philosophies or practices that helped you with that part of the thinking?
Funny that you ask. Yeah, so I am a student of A Course in Miracles.
Yeah,
I have been for over a decade now.
Yeah.
And I am currently going through the course for my third time. And this time I'm doing, instead of one lesson a day as it's sort of designed and set up, I am doing one lesson a week, which is how you did it at first. It is immensely helpful, and you think like, well, you do it and everything's fine. Why are you doing it again? And when you do it once, you realize why you do it again.
Mm-hmm. Which is
the ego is always there trying to instill fear in you, and it is a daily practice to remain vigilant against that. A Course in Miracles provides a framework for how to think about it and how to navigate your way through it, right? And how to focus on love and not fear, ultimately.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. So when you talk about fear, the ego's always ever present, and that's sort of our mission and journey in this world, is in a human body, is not to be overwhelmed or consumed by that fear. How did that play into this process of caretaking and then grieving the loss of the body?
Because I knew what was going to happen to my mom, I knew what the progression of her disease was likely to look like. I knew what I was looking at, and I was scared. I was scared because I knew my mom would eventually have trouble eating. And I was really scared to see her wearing a bib or needing to be fed, or even refusing food. And I had two very strong moments, but to preface those moments, when my mom got sick, I was like, I'm not gonna let any kind of fear stop me. I'm not gonna have any kind of regrets. I'm not gonna let my mom die with things that I didn't say. I'm not gonna, choose jerking off with my left hand tonight instead of being with my family. Like, I'm really diving into this and taking this on and taking this seriously. And I want to be present, and I want to be the son that my mom raised me to be. And I forget where I was going with this.
We're talking about fear, sort of what the Course offers in terms of how fear operates in when we're grieving or losing the body.
So I had this experience where I brought my mom down to the dining room and sat her at the table where she sat with the other ladies. And I went back to her room to grab something, and I walked on my way out, and I saw her talking with these other ladies, and one of them was laughing about something. And I realized that my whole life I had been thinking about my mom as my mom, and kind of ignoring the fact that she was like 1% my mom and like a lot of other things too, right? And so I filtered my entire understanding of my mom through the role of her being my mom. And in that moment I was like, oh, there's a lot here to forgive, because none of that I took seriously, that's just one facet of her life. That would be it didn't make sense to me anymore. It became this instant moment of forgiveness. I just saw her as so much more than I had ever seen her before. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to take on whatever I'm going to take on. And when she started, it was when she got in the nursing homes before the pandemic. And they were offering the chance for family to come and have dinner. Mm-hmm. So I would go and have dinner with my mom, and they cooked really good food. It was a very small facility, so they made really good food. And the first night I was there, I was a little bit worried about how it was all gonna go. And my mom was looking around, and I'm like, "Are you all right, Mom?" And she was like, I'm looking for them to get me a bib. And I was like, oh. And she was like, yeah, I like it because that way I don't get my shirt dirty. And I had been so scared to see her put a bib on, because I thought that's a sign of decline. My mom can't handle her food. And it's true, she was dropping a lot of food, but the problem to her wasn't that she was dropping so much food, is she just didn't want to get her clothes dirty. She had a different priority, and she wasn't scared at all to use a bib. She wanted it. I was scared to see it put on her, and she was specifically requesting it. And it was that kind of an experience where I was like, oh, so where my mom's priorities are and what she thinks are really where I need to be thinking here, because this isn't my experience. This isn't my story. And it became easier to face things, face the fears that I had to face. And each time I got more support, and each time I had a little bit more under my belt to let me know that I was going to be okay. And each time I got another chance to just accept what was happening. Yeah.
So acceptance, finding or searching for a place to accept. And accept doesn't mean we always like what's going on. Accept doesn't mean we're always happy. But searching and trying to find that space where there can be some breaths into acceptance, into loving acceptance of what is happening. over fear.
Yeah, I had to remind myself many times, my mom's gonna die one way or another. Like, she's not getting out alive. This is how it's happening. I incidentally, during her sickness, one of my uncles died very suddenly, like dropped dead in his bedroom, dead. And my cousin didn't have a chance to say goodbye to her dad. I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to him. Nobody knew that when he went up to his bedroom, that was the last time they were gonna see him, I think he went up to grab something and just dropped dead. And, here I am. I have the chance, I have years of foreknowledge that my mom is going to die of this condition, right? And I had so many chances to be with her, and then to say goodbye when it came time to say goodbye.
Yeah.
She was on the hospice at the end of her life, and the last few weeks of her life I spent with her. I knew she was dying, and I got to be there.
Yeah.
That wasn't something that my cousin got, And now, knowing the feeling of losing a parent, I understand how much more that must add to the grief.
When it's a shock,
Mm-hmm.
when it's unexpected.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there can be struggles on both of those continuums, right?
Sure.
The anticipation is one thing, there's pros and cons. The suddenness, the shock can be pros and cons on that.
Yeah, I mean, I knew my mom was going to die, but also for 8 years I had to watch her decline from this illness and watch the person that I knew change into just somebody who was no longer that person,
So for somebody who's watching this video right now, whether it's right now in 2024 or in the years ahead, who are dealing with overwhelming sadness in terms of either holidays or birthdays or Mother's Days or some sort of anniversary, what would you advise or what could you share with them that may help streamline a little bit more into the acceptance, loving part of this process?
So the first thing I would say is you're not alone. There isn't a single person on this world who's not experienced some level of grief. From even the tiniest kid who hasn't had anybody die, but maybe lost a pet or didn't get the toy they wanted, right? And that might seem trivial compared to your grief, but we've all experienced it. You're not alone, even if you feel like you are alone. On the flip side, your grief is your own journey. Nobody can tell you if it's right or wrong. Nobody can tell you that you're doing it right or wrong. Nobody can advise you on how to do it better. And it doesn't mean anything if anybody claps you on the back and says, you're grieving the right way. Your grief is your own journey, right? And that's okay. You are not alone in your grief. That's the first thing I would say. When it comes to acceptance, no amount of beating yourself over the head is going to make acceptance happen, because you didn't get into your grief by beating yourself over the head.
Say that again.
No amount of beating yourself over the head to try and get into acceptance is going to get you out of your grief, because you didn't beat yourself over the head to get into your grief, right? Grief is an emotion, and sometimes people think acceptance, they think about it logically, right? Well, she was going to die, and it has been this long, and I should be over it. And grief is not a logical thing. Don't fucking use logic to solve an emotional problem. It just doesn't work. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think one thing that really helped me is to just say, I'm allowed to be sad. My mom died. Just that gave me some power, right? It just was oh yeah, anybody else in the world, if your mom died or my husband's mom died, I would understand the heartbreak of somebody dying or anybody losing anybody. I would understand that. So I want to understand that for myself, Like, I'm sad because somebody died.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is you don't get a gold medal for acceptance. Acceptance is not like the be all and end all. Acceptance isn't the day that you just stop grieving. Acceptance isn't, the moment where you've checked off all of the marks of grief. Acceptance is something that forms in you over time. Acceptance is that moment of me baking cookies and not crying the first thought of my mom, of smiling. Acceptance happens in small steps. It isn't a distinct moment. And there isn't any one action that you can do or one thought that you can have that can just turn acceptance on for you, right? And sometimes accepting that can be the first step to accepting everything else. It might take you some time, but like, what else are you gonna do with your life?
Beautiful. So acceptance has really been a theme, a common denominator here for the things you've been doing for self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Taking time, being on your own for Thanksgiving, baking, continuing to exercise, continuing to live your life.
Yeah.
Let yourself feel sad.
Yeah.
Because it is sad.
Yeah.
And practicing the tools, the mental tools, the Course of Miracles, the mental fitness that we practice,
Yeah.
Not because it eliminates pain, that's not the goal at all. It's just to be able to, I guess for me, like you said, is to be able to access a loving place even when I'm in pain.
Yeah. And it goes back to what we were talking about sort of earlier with the, instead of judging yourself as being less than 100%, maybe you could look at being more than 0%, right? Like, some days acceptance is going to be an uphill fucking battle, but like if you just show up and say, I'd like to try and figure out how to be accepting today, like you've done 10% right there.
Yeah.
Right? And if that's all you can muster that day, like, okay, but that's still more than enough.
Yeah. I think where people sometimes get into some trouble, especially around holidays, is that pressure, like, well, I should still do all the family stuff, I should still do all the socializing stuff, I should still do all the extroverted stuff, and then sometimes put themselves under strain or really kind of then abuse drugs or alcohol to get to the point of like, well, I don't feel like it, but I should do it. So now I'm going to use more of these substances so I can at least sort of get there. And again, I think that is not really a sustainable, healthy process when we're talking about acceptance.
It's not at all. It's not at all. Acceptance is sort of the child of love and grace, right? Like you need to have love for yourself, you need to have grace for yourself to yield acceptance, right? Like you just gotta be easy with yourself sometimes, and you gotta accept that sometimes it's gonna feel tough, right? And that's not a problem. Like, congratulations, you're human. Yeah.
Anything else you want to say to the folks that are might be struggling right now, whether it's a recent grief or one that was over 10 years ago?
I'm sorry. It sucks. But again, you're not alone. And for sort of practical purposes, I just want to say, like, your grief can last however long it lasts, but if you start to notice that it gets hard to get out of bed, if you're finding that you're losing interest in hanging out with people or doing the things that you used to do, if you're unable to sleep or unable to eat, or if you're fighting a lot with the important people in your life, it might be a sign that your grief is complicated, and you might want to pursue some kind of mental health counseling or therapy for that. But like, if you're crying every day in the morning for 5 minutes because you miss your mom and then you carry on, like, okay, you're grieving, fine. Like, if it's not impacting your life negatively and it feels like a way to process your feelings, there's no reason to judge it.
Beautiful. And I love that you're saying it's like, yeah, you're showing these other signs, in a way that's interfering.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps getting a therapist or a group or some sort of help support can be of value. Again, not to take away the pain, but to work through it.
Absolutely. And to help you find ways to still engage in your life. I think that's one more thing I want to say is, if it makes sense for you, try compartmentalizing your grief a little bit. Allow yourself to cry, but then when you kind of like clear it out for a minute, say, okay, I've cried now and I'm going to move on. For me, that has been helpful because I am someone who could very easily just keep going in a circular pattern about my grief and my sadness, and it's so terrible, and I could just sort of make myself more miserable than is worth it. You don't need to do that for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for listening.
Well, thank you for speaking on this. For me, it's I haven't yet lost a parent. And I know it's going to happen. I mean, statistically speaking, it's going to be, and I sort of I know there's no preparation. Like, I know I can theorize it, I can spiritualize it, I can approach it from an awareness point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I also know from other losses that there's simply no way of actually preparing for the grief, for the loss. It is energy, it is physical, it is palpable. There's just no way. I guess for me, where the meaning of that comes in is just knowing that everything we go through when we lose a parent is like 1,000 times worse when you're the parent losing a child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the only thing really that my parents have ever asked me to do in my crazy life is to not put them through that process.
Yeah.
Because for me, really, that is beyond what human grieving can often take.
Yeah.
So I think that there's meaning in what we go through when we survive a parent, outlive a parent, care for a parent. It means we've spared them.
Yeah.
That times 1,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's honor in that.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom worked her ass off to give me a really good life. The least I could do was take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Here's a gift.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I also know that grief is such a weird thing because it is so universal and yet so isolating at the same time.
Yes.
And the only thing I can say is that I'm so grateful to you that I know that when that day comes, when I need your help, I know I can reach out.
1,000%.
And this is what we do in the world, is see all right, reach out to friends, people we love, and ask for help and support.
Yep.
And I will be asking you for help and support and brownies when the time comes. For me, and I know again from our conversations, it's like, okay, you know, because you love me, but also now you've really been through this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be looking to you for help.
Yeah.
And so, again, I hope that anyone who is contemplating these issues, who is struggling while watching this interview, as Matt said, you're not alone. This is something we go through. Yes, it is universal, and yes, it can be incredibly lonely, but this is part of this human experience. And although it's not about avoiding pain, we can avoid some of the suffering by removing the shoulds, removing the shame, removing the society expectations of, oh, you should be doing it this way, or you should be over it by now, which people still hear sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And talking about it with your friends. Having a bathtub with your friends. Or brunch. Or whatever you do with your friends. It's like, this helps me a lot to have these tough talks where we talk about these things.
Yeah. It helps me too. Because when I talk to other people about how I'm feeling, it really helps me sort of synthesize the thoughts that I've had and put them together in a way and be able to hear them for myself and be like, oh, right, that makes sense. This makes sense. Like the shit coming out of my mouth today is not, this is not rehearsed. It's a collection of the things that I've thought about over the past few months and in the ways that I've thought about things and the understanding that I have now,
Thank you. Thank you for your generosity
You're
of
very
doing
welcome.
this talk and sharing this with me and
You're
with the
very welcome.
TED Talk audience.
You're
It's
very
amazing.
welcome.
All right. If people want to follow your work or see what you're doing or be aware of your thoughts, and how would you want people to follow you? Or
Okay, so there's a few ways to do that. You find me on Instagram. That's kind of probably the best way to start. I'm Eric, ERIC Hassan, HASSAN.
be right underneath there.
Yeah, and a single X. You can find me on the hellscape that is Twitter, Eric Hassan XXX.
Are you going to do the other one? Are you going to transfer to?
I am on Blue Sky.
Oh, okay. I haven't done it yet, but I'm probably going to soon.
I have been for a few months. Come on over. The water's fine. I am Eric Hassan on there. ERICHASSAN.BSKY, whatever it is, .profile or something.
Okay.
But yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, if this is helpful for you, please, think about this interview. Maybe share this with someone who might be struggling during this holiday season. People can also reach out to me. My email is on here, all my information, if they have questions about grieving or resources for how to get help in their local areas. I'm open to that as well. Whatever we do, just to remember we're not alone.
Right.
This is such a connected experience, and that no matter how much pain you're going through, you can make it through this. Okay. If you like this interview, subscribe down below, because there's a whole bunch of other interviews about living and loving and thriving and
Watch
surviving.
the past episodes. They're really amazing.
Thank you. All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.